In this video, we're going to look at using and understanding conceptual narrative in a photograph. We're also going to see if you can decipher a photograph and figure out what it actually means.
Thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Use coupon code CARL to get a 10% discount.
Photographs are one way of telling a story. Just like films or books, a photograph can contain a narrative. And most often, a photograph requires two things to be successful. One is to deliver information, and two, to invoke emotion. Now, if it achieves both of those things, then it can be considered a very successful photograph. If it achieves just one of those things, then it is still a useful photograph. Now, in photography, quite often when we look at an image or we absorb an image, we will try to understand what the meaning of the picture is. We'll try to absorb that information. And in many photographs, that information is very apparent. It's very easy to understand. Some images are blatantly obvious with what they're trying to say. But other images are more ambiguous with their narrative. Sometimes they have a hidden meaning, or they're more conceptual and they're open to interpretation. In fact, many of my own images have a very ambiguous narrative, and that is deliberate. I do that so that there's a sense of intrigue for people to figure out a little bit more about what the picture might mean or what it might mean to them. And that's an important part too. Whilst the photographer may have a narrative for the image, the viewer may have their own narrative to the image. And it's that interesting concept of the absorption of photography and how we perceive images that I find really interesting. Now, in this particular image that we're going to look at today, we're going to take a look at what is really the hidden meaning on this image. What is the narrative and what the clues are that basically describe that narrative. Now, I would say that the narrative in this shot is rather ambiguous. To most people looking at this picture, they may just think, wow, that's interesting or exciting or unusual, or it's got some sort of strange dreamlike quality to it. And for me, that's absolutely fine. But I actually planned this shot with a very decisive narrative, and although it may be considered ambiguous, let's take a look at all the clues in the image to see if you can work out what it actually means. So, let's start off with what we're seeing in the shot. Let's start off with the obvious things. So first of all, we have what I would consider a very sort of utopian style scene. You know, we've got a very, perfect trimmed hedge there. We've got blue skies, wispy clouds, a beautiful model in a lovely 50s or 60s style dress. So we have this feeling of sort of almost like this is a strange sort of, perfect housewife type of scenario. Then we have the icons, if you like, in the image. The ladder, in particular. This ties in with the phrase climbing the ladder, or trying or aspiring to be better. If we look at the styling of the image, it's very 1950s, 1960s styling in what the model's wearing. I deliberately sourced a ladder that was from the styling of the era of the 50s, 60s era rather than a modern aluminium ladder. And the garden shears that the model is holding, I also deliberately spent some time trying to source ones that had that particular shaped handle that suited the era of the time that we're representing in the photograph. Let's look at some other visual clues in the shot. Well, there is a pearl necklace that the subject is wearing. The clothes I mentioned are actually 1950s, 1960s clothes that we purchased deliberately for this picture. Then we have the obvious part of the shot, and that is that our subject is falling, potentially in some danger. and especially in danger with those lethal, sharp, pointy shears in her hand whilst she's actually falling. If we look at the garden, if you like, the hedge or the bush, it is perfectly pristine. It's absolutely cut to perfection. In fact, to achieve that level of perfection, I had the gardener cut the hedge really, really well, and then there was some post-production needed as well. But we can see within the image how pristine that bush is in the shot. Then, of course, as I said, the action of what's taking place. The ladder's sort of tipping, the model is falling from the ladder, and she is clearly in danger. But this all is within and set within what I said earlier, some sort of utopian society scene. So, can you figure out from those clues what the image might mean? Take a moment to study the image and have a look around, and pause this video if you like, because I'm about to reveal exactly what the image means. So, let's take a look. The most obvious clue is that the model is falling, that she is in some sort of danger or hazard. So if we take the title into account, Hazards of the Perfection Paradigm, that gives us a whole nother set of clues to go with the image. So we might consider that the ladder is aspiring to be something or be someone, or climbing the ladder of society, if you like, to be someone or something to someone else. Why would the model be undertaking what she's doing there, wearing the clothes that she's wearing, unless she was aiming for perfection at all times? Because it isn't natural to be wearing that outfit, undertaking that task. And then the task itself is very important. And this is where there's a sort of little sexual connotation to the meaning of the image. What was the model doing in the shot before she actually fell and it became hazardous? Well, she was trimming the bush. And, of course, with the other props that I mentioned earlier in the shot, this and the title of the image, The Hazards of the Perfection Paradigm. And basically, what the image means is the dangers of trying too hard to please other people and not being yourself can actually become hazardous to your well-being and mental health. So that is essentially the conceptual part of the image that I created, and then built the image around that. And in building that image around that concept, it was very important for me to source exactly the right props, exactly the right colours, the dress, the styling, and everything else to be absolutely perfect in the image. It was executed relatively easily once I'd actually acquired all those props, because we just had to wait for the right perfect weather with the perfect blue sky and clouds, and then put it all together. All of the things to do with the image, such as the coloration. If you look at the images, you can see the colour of the wood of the ladder being yellow, the dress being a sort of goldy yellow, the skin tones, the handles of the garden shears, the hair of the model. Everything else in that sort of yellow gold colour offsets beautifully against that deep blue sky. It was shot fairly simply with a Para 133 to come from exactly the same direction as the sunlight in the shot. And then there was an additional Para 88 over to the left, which is casting the edge light down the side of the model's hair and the underside of the body and the legs on the calf muscles, as you can see there. So in terms of the actual execution, apart from the model having to climb up a ladder and jump off the ladder many times to get the shot right, the execution was relatively simple. It's the conceptual ideas that go with that, and then making sure you don't compromise on any of the props or any of the items or any of the things that are related to you achieving the concept. That's what then brings about the success in the image. Now again, even if people don't understand the narrative, even if it is too ambiguous, even if they don't know what the title of the image is, which they will if they see it on my print gallery, because this image will be available for sale. But even without the title of the image, this gives them something to ponder, it gives them something to think about. And whether they create their own narrative or not doesn't really matter. The key thing with the photograph is whether or not the image holds their attention for long enough that they want to study the image. If someone wants to look at an image for a decent amount of time, then you can consider that a successful image. Now, if you'd like to see the whole shoot in video and everything related to acquiring the props and developing the concepts of that shot, you can watch the entire shoot and all of that information on karltayloreducation.com. I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks very much for watching.
This video is brought to you by Squarespace. From websites and online stores to marketing tools and analytics, Squarespace is the all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence and run your business. Head to squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Karl to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.